But if it's going to repeat itself, let's make it brief and short.
Shukran, Field Marshal, Young Nation, you can take over from there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matianga Noor, for playing that song. First, let me begin with our brother Madid, the operator of Lagos State Media. I understand that we are live on Lagos State Media, so we want to appreciate him for that. For those of you who are listening for the first time, let me seize this opportunity once again to welcome you to Aparak Field Marshals space. Taban, we as Aparak Field Marshals, we have been in existence now. For approximately 2 years. And those who are active on the social media, especially Clubhouse, they know exactly why we put this room into existence. Taban, we as Field Marshals, We are here for a reason. And one of the reasons is that there are people who are out. There are people who are out who think that they're playing politics, but they're not playing politics. They're playing tribalism. Instead of focusing on South Sudan politics, they are focusing on Denka as a community, which is very wrong. And we had engaged them on various occasions to stop doing that, but they did not listen to us. That is the reason why we established this room, in order to present to them facts, tangible facts about South Sudan. One of our aims is to allocate weekend as a lecture session. And what we do here, we present facts, documented and written facts. And this is exactly what we are doing today. Before I go to what we are doing today, let me once again welcome my fellow field marshals, the team that are up here on the stage. And let me welcome our dear listeners, the audience, for always being with us. And we always say that our audience are the ultimate judges, Taban. They listen to the both sides of the stories, yani. The radicals that think they're playing politics, but they're tribalists, plus us here as field marshals. So thank you very much. Feel at home. Today, what we want to do, we are going to tackle a topic. And the topic that we're going to deal with today is how the SPLA fought SAP, that is Sudan Armed Forces / Government of Sudan, and Dr. RIEK MACHAR's Nasser faction effect. Okay, so this is the topic that we are going to, and to do this effectively, Taban, we are not going to talk. Hajal Bugulu, I've heard this, or we have heard this, or it was said. No. The Bugulu, he said. We have gone to a great deal to convince people with facts. Since we started this program, we have been presenting facts, written and documented. So today I'm going to introduce to you a book that I call the mother of all books. And the title of this book is Sudan's Painful Road to Peace. A full story of the founding and development of the SPLA. This book was authored by Arop Madun Arop. And of course, in this book, there are several chapters. What I'm going to deal with today is how the SPLA and the SPLM wage their war against not just one government, but successive governments in Khartoum, starting with Nimeri to Swaradahab, to Sadiq al-Mahdi, and then Swaradab interim government, bita 15 generalat bitoda, and then President Bashir. And of course, this book is not like other books written by some South Sudanese for the purposes of commercialization, selling books to get money. This book is well researched, and in fact, I will do a little bit of introduction in this book about the author, so that you understand exactly where we are coming from. So that is what we are going to do. And the real reason for talking about this topic today is to disprove some points, because a lot of things have been said. One of them is that there are critics, those who are anti-SPLM, SPLA, those who are anti-Dictor Garang and are currently anti-Salva Kiir, those who are fighting the SPLM, SPLA as government allies, militias in Upper Nile, in Bahr al-Ghazal, not all Bahr al-Ghazal, Taban, we know Bahr al-Ghazal. There are some areas bita Bahr al-Ghazal, especially Western Bahr al-Ghazal, to be precise. And then Equatoria. You remember Equatorial Defense Forces وميليشيات في غرب النوير وسنترال نوير وإيسترن نوير ميليشيات under Matip, Gabriel Tangenya, Peter Gadet, Gordon Kong. You can name them, a lot of them. These people and their supporters, because they had failed to destroy the SPLM, SPLA, and to topple Dr. Garang, do you know what they're saying now? They're saying that the SPLM, SPLA did not win the war in the South. South Sudan is now free because of the mercy from Bashir. Are you serious? Well, we will show you how the war was fought in Southern Sudan as a region by then, in what was referred to as War Zone 1. Northern Sudan, Al-Kan Bugulu War Zone 2. Because war ده خشى في جبال نوبة وخشى في أنقاسنا هيل وخشى في وين؟ في شرق السودان. So Northern Sudan was known as War Zone 2. Junub Sudan was known as War Zone 1. So we want to show you how the SPLM, SPLA battled government troops across Southern Sudan, so that we prove you wrong that Junub Sudan was donated. Junub Sudan is not United Nations food to be donated for free. In fact, we always say here, there are no free gifts in the real world of politics. Mafi. Otherwise, Palestinians would have been given their country, isn't it? Well, the Western Sahara. You can name other areas. Like in Junub Sudan, there were boots on the ground. And we always say to South Sudanese, the people that we were dealing with, the so-called Muslim brothers, whether National Congress Party or National Islamic Front or Muslim brothers, these people were not playing. They meant business. And their mission was to spread foreign agenda with Arabization and Islamization, not just of the whole Sudan, but the entire Africa. But the African should be grateful to the Almighty God for creating Southern Sudanese and placing them there at the buffer zone between Black Africa and North Africa, dominated by the Arabs, supported by the Middle East. So the case with Junub Sudan, they might joke. Independence of South Sudan was not donated. It was not given because Bashir was merciful. No. And Junub Sudan was not attained because RIEK MACHAR and Lama Call went to Khartoum and they called for the right of self-determination. No. Have you ever had Dr. RIEK MACHAR or Lama Call Darabu Silah that Hakuma Sudan? Mafi. So if you are among the people who say Junub Sudan Tala because they call for it, into food, go back to school, or you must be thinking critically. Read between the lines. So Nas al-Bugulu Junub Sudan was not fought by the SPLM, SPLA. It was not liberated. We want to prove to you it was liberated. But that is number one, because the SPLA had liberated many areas across Equatoria, Bahr al-Ghazal, and even Al-Anil. War was taken to the north. For that, number one. Number two, victories with our SPLM, SPLA there against the government with Sudan. It started in the early 1980s to the middle of 1980s at the height of the SPLM, SPLA war with the Anyanya 2. And then after the Anyanya 2 was destroyed completely and reunification was made, or reconciliation, then victories were intensified. But you know what? When 1991 happened, the victories that the SPLM, SPLA paid for in terms of sweat, blood, and souls was reversed. Victories were reversed because of Lama Kol and Gordon Kong and RIEK MACHAR. RIEK MACHAR bitakum al-gaid fi sijin da, house arrest bitaw da. Al-nas kutar bugulu, Zol is innocent. No, he's not innocent, he's Zol mujrim. And he must pay, yani. He must pay for the crimes that he did politically against the SPLM, SPLA, against Southern Sudan as a territory, and against innocent civilians, and for prolonging the task of liberation struggle. So the victories with our SPLM, SPLA scored for many years were reversed within a matter of weeks and months. because the Nasser Bugulu, Nasser faction leaders, they knew the weaknesses and the strengths between SPLM and SPLA because they were Ajal Bugulu, human intelligence. Zol al biarif asrar bita. It's very dangerous. So they were used yani, as well, should I say GPS? They were used as government of Sudan GPS to show where the SPLA were. Eh? Kalamda is in the book here. Victories with SPLM and the reversal of those victories. We'll go through that. Number 3, في حاجة بيقولوا Denka domination. You hear it now, Denka domination, Denka domination. Those who were in the SPLA, Denka, حاجة بيقولوا Denka domination. كان ما في هنا كمان in the SPLM وفي SPLA, Denka were found everywhere. You go to the SPLM political bureau, the top political military high command. Majority were from Denka, isn't it? It was Denka domination was very visible because they were fighting a war. People who are making noise now, lo shafu bas cabinet bita Salva Kiir fi 5 wala 6 wala 7 Denka, they make noise. Lo shafu SSPDF Denka Kutar, they make noise. The question is, are you trying to tell us during the SPLM, SPLA, Denka were not there in big numbers? But Denka is a nation, it's not a tribe. Lo shalo واحد من أويل, واحد من رومبيك, واحد من توني, واحد من غوريال, واحد من بور, واحد من أبياي, واحد من رنگ, واحد من ملوك, كله معلد, then they converge, then of course, هم بكون كتار. So, حاجة الناس بقول Denka domination ما كان قاعد هنا. And it is mirrored in this book. The composition بتاع SPLA troops وسياسيين وكوماندرات كتار كان SPLA يعني كان من Denka. ده كمان you will see it in this book بعدين because we will talk about ناس كوريوم مثلا. Korean division more division plus battalions within those divisions. Mostly Denka, isn't it? There were more, I mean, there were majority than more and Korean combined together. ده قبيله يعطوا في جنوب السودان because في حاجه بيقولوا قال في حاجه بيقولوا جنوب السودان versus دينكا ما في حاجه بيقولوا جنوب السودان versus دينكا اي زول يقعد في الشجره بتاعه انت لو لتوكا اقعد في الشجره بتاعك ويشوفوا لتوكا كان كم. If you were Murle, you sit under your tree as Murle, ويشوفوا Murle جابوا شنو during the war, Zande جابوا شنو, Nuer جابوا شنو, and then try to compare it with the participation with Denka. So people should not ناس ما يعمل إزعاج كل يوم. Because it is not possible for somebody from Rumbek Muslim to represent the entire Denka. It is not possible. فكلام ده Denka domination was visibly clear in the SPLA, SPLM. Number 4, في حاجة بيقولوا there are people here who are making propaganda online. How come the song بتاع SPLM, SPLA are always played in Denka by Malaga Yuen? Are you serious? During the liberation struggle, nas more nas Koryom. What language were they using? What is new يعني? لو سمعوا أي حاجة بس جابوه بتاع مور وبتاع كوريوم ناس بيعمل إزعاج. This is tribalism. Tribalism. زمان كان ما في هنا في غلا. Even naming بتاع battalions و divisions. They were naming Denka, isn't it? Either Denka, English or Arabic. And you will see it here بعدين. 3 languages بس Denka, English or Arabic. Can I take more for example? More Dorutan Denka. Koryom Dorutan Denka. Then you go inside battalions. Majority of them either English, Arabic or Denka. Shilu Riang Machar, for example, he was heading Katifa Bitoda. Kan bugulu gol. Gol de Rutanwer. Itu ajunubir gol. Le Riang Machar kan ma How come he did not complain, why it was named Gol? Huh? What about Twek Twek? Fikutar is either English, Arabic, or Denka.
Yeah, young nation. Another a little bit correction. Golda ma tung mo yang da do gol.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Gol
e gol da to gol da ma yuan betana bugulu wob da war wide dog. Come I over chol gol tung mo yang.
But that's exactly what I'm saying, Field Marshal Work.
Yeah.
During the liberation struggle, people did not complain. How come it is named in Denka, but now people are making noise? Unas Gol, unas Yon, unas Mor, unas Koryom, unas Twek Twek, unas Kona Nok. Kutarian, they were there, and they were singing in Denka. And I've never heard anyone saying, how come Mor and Koryom were singing in Denka during the liberation struggle? Fizol Gal Kalamda? Mafi. People politicize things for no reason. They tribalize things for no reason. Huh? Huh?
According to Facebook, he said that trick.
Okay, shukran, thank you. Finally, Ajama number 6. في حاجة بيقولوا دينكا phobia or hatred against Jing. يا جماعة, the behaviors that we are seeing now in South Sudan, زول يمشي يعمل مشكلة بتوع مع حكومة هناك لو طلعوا إنه لو ضربوه ودقوه وعملوا defeated بيجي بيقول ده دينكا. Oh, the government is not, it is not easy to overthrow the regime because the Denka community is supporting this regime. منو قال لكم كلام ده؟ Salatin Musakafin beta Denka, they made their position very clear. What is happening in Juba, the power struggle. There is no way that Denka can involve in this madness between Juba. No. But I want to say this. If you are surprised or you are shocked for behaviors happening in South Sudan today, then I think you must be reminded that during the liberation struggle, tribalism, Denka-phobia or hatred against gender was over there. SPLA was being described as Denka movement. Munuma kalam de fi Khartoum fi Junub Sudan. حكومة بتاع خرطوم ده بقول حركة شعبية ده حركة دينكا وفي جنوب السودان ده كله ناس بيقولوا إنه SPLA ده بتاع دينكا is a Denka property and most of our people perish because of that in Upper Nile وإيكواتوريا وفي بارغزال في واو ده for example الناس اللي كان بيقتلوا في واو ده ناس منو؟ مو ده ناس دينكا؟ ليه؟ كان في سالفة في هنا في جوبا كان في independent country بيقولوا جنوب السودان but our people were being killed in واو كلام ده سوى الماسة في زول كان في زول كان قاعد زول ماليشي اسم منو؟ اسم داريوس بشير من فراتيت ولا كيف يا جماعه؟ ما في ستودنتس بتاع بوليتكس يا مش في زول كان اسم داريوس حكيم داريوس بشير اللي كان قاعد يقتل الناس واو ده منو؟ radical militias بتاع فراتيت were killing people. The question is كان في شلفكير في جوبا؟ كان في J1؟ كان في جنوب السودان؟ No ما في. كان في زول اسم DK ماثيو former governor بتاع Upper Nile. He put his hand together with militias بتاع Nyanyatu and he was with Nimeri and they were targeting Denka. كلام ده سهل ما صح؟ في زول اسم بيو يوكوان كان في خرطوم هنا كان قاعد يعمل حركات. في ناس زي ناس بيتر زول زي بيتر شيريلو حكوتوما شيريلو واحد بيعمل زايده بتاع الناس ده. His brother was one of the champions بتاع كوكورا killing Denka. كلام ده سهل ما صح؟ Do you want people to talk? We can talk. Because intimidation and bullying بتاع Denka ده ما دايرين. If you have grievances, go to Juba. I think I will stop here. We will analyze all these things by then. But we are going to talk less and we'll do more reading so that people listen. What I want you to do now is to listen to this book. I said before, the title of the book is called Sudan's Painful Road to Peace, a full history of the founding and development of the SPLA. The author is called Arop Madun Arop. Let's see, who is this Arop Madun? What did he do? Where did he get the information to write this book? And I want to read a little bit about him so that you understand. Because for you to understand this book, it is good for you to listen to few information about him. It says here, the preface. We are the one, he's the one, the author wrote it. It says that at the head of fighting between the government army and the rebels of the Sudan People's Liberation Army in 1986, and as the editor of the Heritage weekly newspaper, it was natural that I should conduct interviews with key players in the country's civil war. The aim behind these interviews was basically to sound out opinions of various people, beginning from the grassroots to the top government officials and political echelons, about the possibility of halting the war in favor of permanent peace. Just follow me, okay, about him, so that you don't judge or misjudge this book. These interviews were conducted under the theme, Sudan Quest for Peace, who is telling the truth? With that in mind, I traveled extensively in the country, making a wide range of contacts, gauging the general feeling about the attainment of peace. I was struck by the general feeling that the whole nation was yearning for peace and against the continuation of the war that was at that time increasingly galvanizing into widespread civil strife. To put the plan into practice, I ventured into the field to talk to the rank and file of the SPLA cadets. I also had the chance to talk to the underground cells inside the country. I also discussed peace issues with the government security personnel who were ready to give me the general trend of thinking in the country about the need to reestablish peace and stability in the country. At the center of this game, there were accusations and counter-accusations with the two neighborly states trying to degenerate or denigrate each other. The Sudan government was accusing the Ethiopian government for allegedly supporting the SPLA rebels materially and logistically, and the Ethiopian government was accusing the Sudan government for aiding the Eritrean and the Tigrayan guerrillas in a tit-for-tat venture. This trading of accusations was bound to affect relations not only between the two states, but their respective people caught up between the battle lines. There was therefore a dire need to interview authorities in both countries, as well as their respective rebel groups, on the issues of war and peace. Thus, in December 1986, I traveled to Addis Ababa, where I met with the Ethiopian incumbent president, Colonel Mengistu Haile Mariam, who generously offered his views and discussed at length the issues involved. Back home, I interviewed the Sudanese Prime Minister, Sadiq al-Mahdi, who also told me his part of the story about what he thought could be done about the war and how best it could be halted. Following my interview with al-Mahdi and some of his ministers, I met and discussed issues of war and peace with a number of leading northern and southern politicians. Among the northern elite that I frequently discussed the northern viewpoint with Dr. Taisir Mohammed Ahmed Ali, who since overthrow of Nimeri regime in 1985 had devoted much of his time in the search for peace. Dr. Taisir was then shuttling between authorities inside the country and the SPLM officials in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. He was indeed very central in the later rapprochement between the northern elite and the SPLM leadership, which led to the signing of the Koka Dam and Ambo Accords. He was therefore a good source for my purpose. On the southern spectrum, I continuously discuss the issues at stake with Hilary Paul Logali, the most respected and seasoned of southern leaders. Late Logali was also handy, even at the small hours of the night, to offer me his views and analysis on my plan. Having ascertained the general trends of events inside the country, I traveled once more to Ethiopia, where I talked with senior commanders of the SPLA. The top officers I interviewed included an all-weather southern politicians, Uncle Joseph Oduho, William Yuan Bany, SPLA Chief of General Staff, Karbino Kwanyin Bol, SPLA Deputy Chairman and Deputy Commander-in-Chief, Arok Tonarok, Deputy Chief of Staff for Administration and Logistics, Dr. Lama Akola Jawin, SPLM Representative for Peace and External Relations, SPLA Commanders Lualding Wol, Yusuf Meki, and Alfred Lado Gore. I also talked with Captains Bariwanji, Simon Mori Didumo, and many others in the rank and file of the movement. Indeed, the list was long. Some of those interviews were later published in the Heritage newspaper in Khartoum. The Africa events in London and Nigeria, no, just all of the African events in London and Nigrezia in Verona/Rome, Italy. My later work with the Sudan Council of Churches at the Advocacy and Communication Desk, 1988 and 1994, offered me a golden chance to follow up closely the issues of war and peace. At the Sudan Council of Churches Advocacy Desk, I was able to shuttle between Khartoum and Addis Ababa in an effort to follow up peace negotiations between the Sudanese officials and the rebel leaders at various stages and fora. Having assessed the option inside the country, I traveled to Kenya to cover the meetings between the parliamentary delegation of the Union of Sudan African Parties, USAP, from Khartoum and the SPLM leaders. The USAP and the SPLM meetings were aimed, among others, at efforts to compare the agendas on the peace process. In Nairobi, I managed to conduct a lengthy interview with the SPLA leader, Dr. John Garang de Mabio, who elaborately gave me an inside story about the birth and policies of the SPLA. Besides this basic information, Dr. Garang talked at length on the issues of war and peace in Sudan. These interviews, however, were continued between 1986 and 1989. But before I could put my ideas together, the Islamists seized power in a military coup. The period that followed witnessed the intensification of the war and the reluctant mutual destruction in lives and materials, not only in the southern Sudan, where much of the fighting took place, but throughout the country. Predictably, the military regime took power in 1989, scrapped all the previous peace initiatives and imposed its own Orwellian peace overtures. Not only that, I was arrested and detained for the next 14 months, from March to September 1990 at Kobar prison, and September 1990 to May 1991 at the new Halfa. Apparently, the military junta may have designed this in order to curb my activities, which they look at with suspicion. Sadly to say, my long detention brought my plan to a halt, albeit temporarily. Nevertheless, I continued discussing my plan with the political inmates, some of whom were senior cadets of their respective parties or former ministers in the defunct democratic regime. Following my release from detention in 1991, I came over to London to recapitulate in 1992. It was during this time that I was able to put my ideas together and then lie down the main theme of the book. Yet these writings remain on paper till January 1994, when I paid a visit to Oxford, where I discussed my plan with old friend, Dr. Douglas H. Johnson. He suggested that the material could provide basis for a book. I immediately started making the structure of the book. I returned to Sudan to gather more materials in order to come back to UK in 1995 to put my plan into practice. Unfortunately, I could not get back in time because of a visa problem. Hence, another delay to start my program. However, with the assistance of Dr. Johnson, I managed to get a fellowship at St. Anthony's College, University of Oxford. Dr. Johnson was at this time a senior fellow at St. Anthony's College, University of Oxford. Dr. Johnson and I worked together in the Regional Ministry of Culture and Information in Juba in 1977 to 1980. He was therefore not alien to my plan. Thus, under the Rhodes Race Relation Chair Fund in April 1999, serious work began. 18 months later, the book started to take shape. It took another 2 years to complete the final manuscript. Basically, the work is a collection of interviews compiled in the course of time about the Sudanese conflict in general and the SPLA military campaign. It starts with the winding up the first Anyanya War, 1969 to 1972, through the 10 years of regional self-rule to the emergence of the SPLA in 1983. The book then discusses in details the military campaign and efforts exerted to bring the warring parties to the negotiating table, in addition to the conclusion of the signing of the Naivasha Comprehensive Peace Agreement. In brief, the book could be described as an inside story of the rise and development of the SPLA Movement and Liberation Army, its subsequent military campaign, which eventually galvanized into large-scale civil war, and the final attainment of a permanent peace. Now, let me stop here. You see, the reason I read this is that taban fi propaganda. There are people who say, oh, this book was written by JCE. It was written by Denka. Kalam de Masa. Because there are people, when they hear truth in this book, but then, you have seen or you have heard Zol de Ma Zol Basi and writing a book so that an Elga Grush, Zebag is Siasin, Al-Bajiri for Nairobi, or Kampala, or Addis Ababa, or in the West. No. You have seen the level of interviews that he conducted with the Sudanese government, with the leadership at SPLA, with the Mengistu's regime. He went everywhere, talking to people, Nas Sadiq al-Mahdi, even Nas Turabi, Nas Bashir, Nas Dictor Garang, SPLA commanders on the ground, with military leaders bita Sudan. Zola, Katab Kitab, even there is something here at the back of the book. If you were to go at the back of the book, I don't want to read it all. Fi mahal kida towards the end. They say this book, it is designed as a reference book for students of Sudanese politics in general, and more importantly, a comprehensive record of the recent history of Southern Sudan. Let me repeat that again. The book was designed as a reference book for students of Sudanese politics, because this is the reason why I call this book Mother of All Books. For Anna, having made this introduction very clear, you must understand that when you are hearing something or listening to something here, I believe, he conducted extensive research since 1986. That's my kalam de quiz. Me, 1986, even when Bashir, he mentioned here, when Bashir came to power, he was arrested because the regime was scared of this man. He was talking to almost everyone. Arrested for good 14 months. When he was released, he fled the country. So don't play with him. Zol Bugula Rob Maduna Robda, may he rest in peace because he passed away. For that is what I want to say.
Young nation.
Yes.
Shamashi, Dr. Alhaj is making nonsense down there. Did you read about his comments?
No, I don't have time for reading because then
Yeah.
Zol lema de zol waham de ya zol al bugul shunu zol da al high pole da they are advisor bita Thomas Shirilo. He's a member and part of the leadership bita NAS. They are zol al bugul mushkila bita Junub Sudan de denka. Zol bugul al high pole da they are advisor bita Thomas Shirilo. Who Thomas Shirilo beji to pretend on social media gal NAS bitom da gal is a national movement. Ufi advisor bito beji advisor bito come and leak out information here. What they discuss there secretly.
He's still writing Jeng book.
Online here. Aswa, Al-Haj Paul Beji Bugulu, Hajat Bitom, they leak there secretly. Beji Bugulinu, Mushkila Bita Junub Sudan de Denka. Leader Bito Bugulinu, Mushkila Bitana de Yani regime. Who advise the Bugul, Mushkila Bita de Jenge. So Mazola into reason for him to be mad, Yani. About this book. So let me go now to the main reason or to the main topic. Victories with SPLA for Junub Sudan because those poll das al high poll bugulinu Junub Sudan was not liberated through military struggle. Lekin for us who study politics, negotiations on the table are determined by military struggle or military victories on the ground. Negotiation with powerful government like government with Akwan and Muslimin is only determined on the table by boots on the ground. If SPLA was weak, do you think Junub Sudan can battle? Because MACHAR was calling for it. We got for Khartoum, 9 for Khartoum for 10 years, from 1991 until 2002. As ma kalam da Junubin. Dr. Garang Lokan Ma'amal war man as Fakir. The war I'm going to discuss in this book now. Bele Dekan Matala. But let me go to our today's topic. Okay. Now I'm going to read this randomly. بس أي محل الحرب حرب SPLA عملوا. Because book ده ما book بتاع لعب يعني. ده يعني something very serious. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Okay, what is it?
لناس اسم الحاج بول ده بوك زراب ده بقول ده بنادو إنيا يعني this is the Mahdi, the mother of all poison. They can cook it and the entire village will abandon the village. For the next 5 years, nobody will come back to that village. Because they made the mother of nasty poison with rotten egg and all of that. Just you smell it, animals walk away from the village. So they call it Anyanya. And now they name a movement Galisimo Anyanya. Yeah, they are going to fight until the Jalaba smell this and Jalaba will run away from Equatoria. Jesus Christ. Go ahead.
Shukran, Matianganur. Now, Anna, I would advise you, get yourself a cup of coffee or a tea or soft drink. ولو في popcorn ذاته حاجات بتاع movie ده خدته في جنبك بس. موبايل بتاعك خدته بس في تد مخدة. Because we are going to take you through what happened. We are going to take you to the 80s and 90s. عشان الناس اللي بيقولوا إنه حرب جنوب السودان ده was donated. هم يسمعوا كويس. And I hope Al-Haj Paul is listening. Let him listen because he was in London ولا وين؟ ولا في خرطوم. Let him listen here. Now let's begin. SPLA launches full-scale military campaign. They are subtitled. It says here, throughout 1984, the SPLA was undoubtedly in preparatory stage to move away from the hectic situation and to find a positive atmosphere to consolidate itself by adopting structural policies on political and military arenas. This was simply an expedient move. As stated earlier, the mutiny among the garrisons were to mark the first wave of resistance against the Sudanese government forces in the south. Recruiting missions mentioned in Chapter 4 were sent to various provinces in order to engage the government troops when they were possible. when the SPLA graduated the Timsah and Tiger battalions, it became necessary that the new well-charged batches must be put into action. They were now in the position of possessing sophisticated anti-aircraft surface-to-air missiles, some 6 and 7, capable of keeping off the Sudan Air Force. The Timsah battalion was put under the command of Major Arok Tonarok, and the Tiger battalion led by Major Salva Kiir Mayardit. The two battalions went into action, swept and captured Pochala and Pibor, and inflicting a devastating destruction upon the government troops, including the shooting down of the two Soviet-made F-5 fighter crafts. Let me stop there, Shoya. Finas Bugulinu Salva Kiir Mayardit Mamal Intisara during the war. Walai Salva Kiir there, walai. They were even asking us, Salva Kiir Harar Belediatu. Mahal Basi Dasa has proved these people wrong, isn't it? Arok Tonarok or Salva Kiir. They captured Pochala and Pibor. Wala kalam da keva jama. The victory bita Salva Kiir wala ma victory bita Salva Kiir wa Arok Tonarok. Yauda galwasa. Arakat Marquez. Let's continue. The two armies crossed over the Nile to Bantu, where another oil battalion was already operating. The guerrilla activities in the Bantu terrorized the country a great deal. Soon after the SPLA graduated, whole division, codenamed Koryom. It was so named to reflect the locust capacity and power to devour out plants and vegetation, thus making areas they pass through barren. Koryom division may have been a turning point in the SPLA military operations. Just like locusts always do, Koryom armies swept the countryside much more extensively, to the extent that Nimeri's regime was shocked and became worried. Nimeri's regime was what? Shocked.
And became worried.
Koryom was divided into many battalions. Koryom division. Exactly, that was what was in that song, because he was shocked. Koryom division was divided into many battalions. The southern axis composed of Zindia, Cobra, and Rat battalions. These battalions were sent to the southern Upper Nile, areas adjacent to Equatoria. They were under the command of Major Arok Tonarok and assisted by Bonabang, Benjamin Nyankot, Gatwich Dwal, Peter Panom Tanpin, and Benjamin Makur. Let me stop there. People talk about domination with Adenka. Domination in the government of South Sudan. What did you hear here? Koryom. Then as Munia Kaninak. How many Denka are here? There is only one Gatwich Dwal. Gadyamal Zaja Zada. Gatwich Dwal. Bita Ayoda.
Peter Panom Tanpin. And Peter Panom Tanpin was there too. Yeah.
Peter Panom.
Yeah, he was there. Peter Panom.
Okay, two.
Nyankot.
Bugulo gada wichidwal. Munyidel.
Asma Matianganur and the rest of you. Koryom division was headed by number 1, Arok Tonarok. Number 2, Bonabang. Number 3, Benjamin Yankot. And then Benjamin Makur. How many? How many of them? 4 out of 6. The domination was that. Well, it domination. But they were fighting. Nobody talked about it. Because Ajama, there is Matianganur and the rest of you, there is serious bullying going on here. People are blackmailed. في جنوب السودان ده اسم بتاع دينكا ده هسه اي زول كله بيعمل ده تيشو. اي حكومه يحسسوه داير يشوفوه how many دينكا ده لو لقاوا 4 ولا 5 دومينيشن. دومينيشن منو قال لكم ده حاجه جديد؟ ده ما دومينيشن ذاته، ده حاجه بس يعني they come because of their numbers. Denka is a nation, it's not a tribe. So you have seen now Koryom. Let me repeat that again. Koryom division was divided into many battalions. The southern axis composed of Zindia, Cobra, and Rad. The southerner. These battalions were sent to southern Upper Nile and areas adjacent to Equatoria. They were under the command of Major Arok Thonarok and assisted by Bonabang, Benjamin Yankot, Gadwig Dwal, Peter Ponom Tanpin, and Benjamin Makur. The Zindia and Cobra went into action and wiped out 2 companies of the government paratroopers sent against them at Jameza, just 50 miles south of Bor town. They also fought pitch battles with the Sudanese armed forces at Lokileri, near Torit. Did you hear that? David and Lokileri, I think.
قالتهم شكل وين؟ قالتهم شكل وين؟
Yes. Uchanga Gadamul is either let them come here to listen. Unas Teresa Jubek, let them come here and listen. Nas Dominic Akwai, Unas Munu, all of them, let them come and listen. Because the concoction of the story that they want to twist things. Real war asili battalions, divisional can guide. They want to hear. Arakat beton beji on the social media, they must stop it. Propaganda, they must stop. Now let's continue. Koryom Southern Axis also destroyed one army or enemy battalion at Owinkibul in a Acholi area. It also attacked Terekeka, just 50 miles north of Juba. Another sector of Koryom Division, the Central Command, consisted of Bilfam, Lion, Elephant, and Hippo battalions that came directly under the command of Colonel John Garang. He was assisted by Karbino Kwanyin Bol, Paul Manyang Juk, Daniel Denga Lony, Captain Alfred Akoch, Captain Francis Jago or Letago, Captain Denga Lorqual, Captain Chol Denga Lak, Captain James Jok Moon, and Captain John Lem. How many Denka are there?
All Dinka except 3.
Exactly. The domination, my domination. Who can't feel so because people were fighting a buffalo. So is I can mafi. Al-Masha refugee camp Masha. Al-Masha Kanais Masha. Al-Masha Uganda. People who declared themselves as Ugandan, well Ethiopian, well Kenyan, they were there.
Of course, Marshal. It's a death resume.
Exactly. Let me repeat that again, Matanganu. Let me repeat that.
Young nation, they are dying in the land. Our land, Dinka grab our land.
Exactly. Exactly. Koryom was fighting there to death. Why don't you love your area?
Young nation, they want to play the chess and they think young nation is sleeping. And those of William II, they are sleeping, That is a very good thing, eh? And they say they are smart. They are smart. They think they are very smart, eh?
Exactly. Shifta wanasal biangulusa kedinu. I believe that no. They must be faced with facts. What Joseph just said, Joseph Duke is true. Go back to your area. Why are you here? Why you don't love your area? You can't win during this war. You can't win nas jasa. Move out. Things were very tough. That will munukuru bazu Aparak. Yau kan gadatu yau gadatu nafusu basu jubal bita Equatoria de. Unas jara fi Uganda u Congo u Kenya. Al khasha fi kanais. Khasha fi munazamat. For people who declare themselves as non-South Sudanese were in abundance. When who is Aida? Let me repeat that once again. Koryom Southern Axis also, Koryom Southern Axis also destroyed one enemy battalion at Owinkibul in Acholi area. it also
When
attacked.
you bowl you dumb, you ball you.
Yes,
When you
that's the
bowl
one.
you dumb.
Nimero good and numping.
Very good in the
Good.
Malu the Mary. Bugule, it must it shackle win. It shackle win. Well, when Holocaust is happening to us, you were nowhere to be found.
Exactly, they weren't muted. Owinkable was liberated. Terekeka was liberated. That they should know the southern access, well, a southern command. This is India with the Cobra with the Rat and Arok Tonaro. And then Central Command, another sector of Korean Division, the Central Command consists of Bilfam, Lion, Elephant, and Hippo battalions that came directly under the command of Colonel John Garang. And he was assisted by Kerbino Kwanyin Bol, Paul Manyang Juk, Daniel Denga Aloy, Captain Alfred Akwoch, Captain Francis Dago Waljago, Captain Denga Lor Kwol, Captain Chol Deng Alak, Captain James Jok Moon, and Captain John Lem. So let's put that aside. The Central Command went onto the offensive. Yes.
Hey, Michael, let me make this clear. Among the people you count, among the captain you count, 3 of them are from ABI. Why were they fighting for Junub that you told them not to be part of it now? 3 of them are from ABI.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for that point. Because propaganda in Rumai Bitomda. Now, let's see what the Central Command did. The Central Command went on the offensive, and on the 3rd of March, 1985, it captured Juko. Asma kalam de kweza. Area as terrorist white army gadamuli zaida. They were not making a zaid when Mundukuru was there. I don't know where were they. Oh, Nana Bottle, Nana Warrior, where were they? The Central Command went on the offensive, and on the 3rd of March, 1985, it captured Juko garrison and killed many troops, including Colonel Bala. The remnants were taken prisoners of war. The other sector of Koreom Division, the Northern Axis, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Francis Ngor Makich, was sent to the southern Blue Nile region. It engaged the Sudanese government troops and captured Dajo, Padilgi, and Maban. Do you see what is happening here? Junubin, Northern sector, under Francis Ngor, Minwen, Mindenka. Central Command under Dr. Garang, Minwen, Mindenka. Southern Command under Rockton Arok, Minwen, Mindenka. Finance can be why the Denka were in charge of all this? No, nobody. Nobody. So is that the answer? Gadi Amulino, oh, Ishuvubas was zero wide, is that? Commander wide, is that? Well, the general wide, is that? We want to justify today. You know, Hajal Bugulu domination, da. Dema Haja Jadid. If you are crying because of that, you are just wasting your time. You are wasting your time. Because Denkada, 5 million plus, but they're representing different people from different areas of Denka. Wana bugulokum kulyom zol wad min Boro, wad min Rango, wad min Abia, wad min Malut, wad min Rumbego, wad min Tonyu, wad min Gogrial. You put them together, they become majority than Gabila wide. The Lokoro, for example, bita Dominica Kwaide. Idashar Alf. They have Gulu Gabila, like in Denka is not Gabila. County wide, plus 33 counties. It went Tamil, you know.
Yeah, there's all the Bugulu Feograk, Ogaje, the Tour Garangunama Biodit, Ogaje, Lana Carbino, William, Salpaki, Ramaya did, Arangunaton, Nor Makik, Pagadaguk.
Yes,
Down there's all the
exactly.
Nor Makik, Pagadaguk.
Exactly.
The Nor command, Pagadaguk, in Abia. The King Fuzobi Bugul Nasabia, coward, Mabi Shackle, woman Bekimia Hinak.
Let's continue. The 4th sector of Koryom, Agreb Battalion, the 4th sector of Koryom, Agreb Battalion, the Eastern Axis was under the command of Major Nyachugak Nyachuluk. The Agreb Battalion overran the government forces in Buma, Plateau, and other posts east of Bor town with relative ease. Finally, the 5th column of Koryom was the Rhino Battalion under the command of Colonel Martin Makura Layo and Pagana Mom. This battalion was sent to Bahr al-Ghazal. And Yajama, pay attention to this. Nas John Uchanga Jamli Zakul Yom, we were in the SPLM. No, Zolakan militia. Ma Biar Zato SPLM was active in Bahr al-Ghazal. Well, Jama Mush Jamli Zakul Yom, Wallahi Yaki war was not fought in Denka areas. Man, the militia. That was the reason why he was even sentenced to death. Edi Chichak Nyong Taralirbook, and Bukai Pulnim.
So Pierre Bachel, it amused me why Bargadal people are almost 80% of the population fighting for the country while there's no war in their land. What was their purpose?
Exactly, ma, the propaganda. The propaganda. Nas Ochangu, Nas Kurtas. FOUGH Bugul General Kurtas in Maban. Jamli Zakul Yom. I was in Bright Star campaign. Uzon ma biar SPLA they were in Bargazal. Gal, no. How many times did we debate them here? Now let me read this a little bit, but I'll go deep by then in other areas or other pages. It says finally the 5th column of Koryom was the Rhino Battalion under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Martin Makura Layo and Pagana Mom. This battalion was sent to Bahr al-Ghazal where it paralyzed, mark that word, paralyzed the transport system in the whole province. It overran the towns of Yerul, Al-Wagluak, Tony, and isolated Wau and Rumbek towns. With these operations, SPLA was now in a full-scale conventional warfare. Conventional. In political term, conventional, dema haja ze raids, bita nas ayo de bita nas, where people stand on the road, then you, no. Conventional, the haja ze 2 armies. Army bita country do, army bita country do, well-equipped forces fighting. Conventional. With these operations, SPLA was now in a full-scale conventional warfare. President Nimeri became exceedingly restless. Katamat. President Nimeri became exceedingly restless to the extent that he started a shuttle diplomacy, going around the world looking for effective means of halting the ever-powerful insurgency. You mark that word, ever-powerful insurgency.
Keyword, ever powerful, ever. Yeah,
yes. In his famous speech of 22nd March 1985, Colonel John Garang stated that the movement's great ability and political achievements within a relatively small period of 22 months of revolutionary armed struggle have thrown the oppressor in Khartoum into complete disarray. Katamat, Nimeri's May regime has lost its bearings, it's tottering, seniled, and is moving towards its final collapse. The regime is like a patient at a terminal stage of illness. defeat or harness the Sudanese army in the first 2 years, 1983 to 1985, SPLA managed to inflict immeasurable damage or damages to them. Even so, it was not without difficulties. The cost of fighting an established regime was enormous, as the SPLA was fighting on two fronts. Asma kalam de kweza. The first difficulty was that the SPLA confronted the well-equipped government troops with conventional warfare instead of the expected guerrilla tactics. Consequently, it cost the SPLA dearly in terms of men and materials. For instance, the SPLA captured the garrison towns of Jukau, Pibor, and Nasir with great loss of lives. Nasir da, Irabin terrorist gadamul Zaida. It was paid for. A lot of people died. Jukau and Nasir. وفي ناس سجمانين قاعد يعمل إزعاج أركاد هسه. نازل كان وين؟ when Jukau and Nasir were under Munukuru. Can win. Nas the best there, Mother Wanasa. Yes.
Is where our beloved General Major Dak here fought.
Exactly. Major Dak fought in this battle of Buguluda and he liberated that area. أي زول أي community ولا أي زول ولا أي family ولا أي قبيلة قاعد يعمل حركات في جنوب السودان. أي زول في جنوب السودان قاعد يعمل حركات disrespecting the government وجيش بتاع وطن must pay price. We don't care who you are, I mean, where you are from, whether in Bar. You become tribalist, you pay the price. So let's continue. The second difficulty, which was more worrying for the SPLA, was the government's policy of arming tribal militias. You mark that word, huh? The second difficulty, which was more worrying for the SPLA, was the government's policy of arming tribal militias to fight against the SPLA and operating within SPLA lines of defense. Militia, the kind of tribal militias, but they were there. So, I'm a young nation, the Sudan as people fighting against the Shinu on tribal. That guy means a man. But self-Fakir government must deal with them just like Dr. Garang dealt with them. So let's continue. Girl, these attacks by the scores of militiamen worried the SPLA most. However, it was easy to contain these heavily laden government troops by laying siege around the garrisons. The SPLA efforts to disperse the militia groups, 8 of which were operating within the SPLA controlled territories. 8 tribal militia were operating. Can let's see then as Munu? Pose serious security risk. Then as Munu, the most effective tribal militias were the Mandari, Murle, Zande, Madi, Faratit, Taposa, Acholi, and Anyanyatu. Anyanyatu then as Munu? Madan as Davidian, then as Dengtong. I'll be as ties or toots who got courts who got wax, I'll get Amal Zaida. And the Messiria Ana Murahalin. Did you hear that, Junubi? Mandari, Murle, Zande, Madi, Faratit, Taposa, Acholi, Danyanyatu, and the Messiria / Murahalin. These are the people ganging up against the SPLA. What was your problem? Because finance become Fijuba now with Mahalad el Kulu. Gadishaja further. In case of Zande, Bashir, there were 2 people, Dominic Cassiano, Zola Kandarab Nascarbino, the person who attacked 105 Bor. Mare Dominic Cassiano. Ufi Mujiri Mohaitane Kanisi Isaiah Paul. These people, they were the one recruiting, pushing SPL or keeping SPL out from Western Equatoria. Well, you mess around, Tamil Arakat, you are known. We know you. As young nation, we know. Because we are the custodian of history. You come here, Bashir on social media. I say I'm used to this guy. Means a man. Well, Malazim David I just say I'm used to this guy. But what is the role of the government? You deal with them just like Dr. Garang dealt with them. The Amul is Amalu defeated the Saranda. The Lafa Doran. And this is why it is important for tanks to be rolled or helicopter dominating the sky. But mujrim, whether you are in the swamp or you are on the mountain. Amulena is that. Okay, let's continue. In such hostile terrain, SPLA forces that carefully ventured into the rural areas where the militias were very active, ostensibly in search of food, were subsequently ambushed and killed by these militiamen. There were many instances when the SPLA fighters were wiped out altogether with their officers and men. Did you hear that? Like what happened in Nasser? The Maja did. For example, during the capture of Bukteng, the area in eastern Upper Nile, during the area of Bukteng, the headquarters of the SPLA Battalion 104 and 105, men or controlled mostly by Nuer officers and men, many lives, including those of Lieutenant Colonel Francis Ngormakich and 24 officers. You mark that word, huh? 24 officers were lost in 1984. The capture of Bukteng turned out later to have been a conspiracy hatched by the Nuer officers out of sympathy and solidarity with their fellow Nuer in Anyanya too, the militia force friendly to Sudan government. You want me to repeat that? So the question is, why are you surprised, sir? Why is Salva Kiir surprised? Salva Kiir should be experienced about these issues. Nazal, they were there. Means the man conspiracy that people are talking about today was there. Where people use ethnic group to mobilize, to fight. Zol Sejman, Yektul Zol Francis Ngor, Makich, a decorated military officer that left duties for Sudan. Zol Kan Khasha for Kulia Harbiya, very talented. Only to go and aid up in the hand with Anas Sejmanin Majanin there. Well, let me repeat that again. During the capture of Bukteng, the headquarters of SPLA battalions 104 and 5, managed mostly by Nuer officers and men, many lives, including those of Lieutenant Colonel Francis Ngor Makich, and 24 officers were lost in 1984. The capture of Bukteng turned out later to have been a conspiracy hatched by the Nuer officers out of sympathy and solidarity with their fellow Nuer in Anyanya too. You try to connect the dot. What White Army is doing, Asa? Dema solidarity with sympathy with Ayo. Well, again, I should look into this. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
I think the collaboration, what they call mentality or bloodline is running on their veins. So they've been doing this since day one. I don't know why people are surprised. That's true.
Certainly, people should not be surprised. The only medicine is for the leadership to deal with any zol gadamla rakat. We don't care who you are.
Tarba young nation, المشكلة بتاع بوكين reading ده. في زول قبيل سميته دانيال دينغالون وده يعود ضمن الكتيبة مظلوم خرجوا عشان يبتوا شعر ثقة لأبر نايل وزول اللي كان قايد ده كان ويليام نيون ذات بنفسه شكل ده كان ناس بدوك نفوذهم بسونجي ما في زول ده رجل من زول. I think I talked about it before. You know, it was a tough war. Bukteng ده وفي النهاية طردهم ذاته وكلهم they have been cleaned up وبوكتين بقى free.
كتمت يا جماعة the killing of Francis Ngor and 24 officers into similarity with the killing of David Majordak and the SSPDF soldiers, because it happened in the same area, the same territory, because Buktengda is part of the Jikan. Buktengda is in Upper Nile, especially Eastern Upper Nile. What happened to Major Dagda conspiracy? What happened to... This is the reason why Nas Cholton, they were not playing. When you see the government rolling in tank or helicopter, because the historical thing behind this. But you know what? Just like how that incident with Francis Ngor ended, this is going to end like that. The question is, what happened when they killed Francis Ngor? When they killed 24 officers, what happened? You go back and ask. Go and ask them what happened. They know it until today. So you misbehave in South Sudan, you pay the price. And this is an opportunity for intellectuals and leaders, both traditional leaders and government officials, to talk to the people in South Sudan. You tamper with any setting administration or government in South Sudan, you will be dealt with. ممكن يخلوا الناس تكون on the loose. On the loose بس زول يعني الناس. Now the question is, وينو الناس كبار؟ يخلوا الناس يعملوا حركات. People don't get tired. History is very clear. You misbehave, you pay the price, you end up in failure. تعمل ازاي تمشي تبكي كده لو راسك بقى تعبان بعدين بتكون زي جنة سعير قاعد يعمل ازاي لأمه لو وجارات مسك بعدين بنوم. That is what is happening. So those who are entertaining nonsense, we are going to Juba, will be it is going to end up like Anyanya 2, this madness that is happening now. Madness al-Badaw fi Shar, Talata wala Shar Kam, 2025, that are doing just few months, locatir few years. They will give up. Ras to go with bus helicopter with Tayarat bus with Dababat Tahat. Mada Lava Doran. Salva Kiir must act like president. He must not act like Zol Tayyip. He got for Juba, we are threatening other communities in South Sudan, we're threatening the government. No. They should know that Khartoum is not in the picture. Alkan Badiv, Tahania, Asla, Dababat, we shouldn't. No, it's not there anymore. But let's continue, Jama. We'll talk more about these issues. Girl, from the above analysis, one can safely say the SPLA failure to win all the Southern Sudanese tribes into one rebel organization led to the infighting on two fronts: the tribal militias, the enemy from within, and the government, the enemy from without. In such a situation, the casualties were bound to be enormous. Okay, let's go to another part. Al-Bugulunu, the fighting and talking strategy. As the SPLA has managed to deploy the division of troops, Corium or Lakers, described in chapter 5. Okay, go ahead.
The enormous casualties from the enemy within and enemy of the front, of the forefront, the main enemy. So these are the militia that was recruited by the Sudan government. So now the casualties that became enormous, which means our own SPLA forces were not only fell at the hands of Arab in the battle, but our own people. Al-Nas al-Hasa Bugulu Gal, and then we vote for Junub Sudan. We to shackle win. These are the same people our brothers fell in their hand.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely, Matiang Noor. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue. As the SPLA had managed to deploy one division of troops, Corium or Lakers, described in chapter 5, it was expected naturally that it could graduate and deploy another similar division sooner or later. In response to the order of the Commander-in-Chief in May 1985, the SPLA indeed deployed a second division known as Mormor. It was so named because of its tireless trailing to reach the target. Mormor, which was graduated together. Mormor, which Mormor, which was graduated together with Corium, but was delayed due to lack of sufficient logistics. Underline that because this point is very important. They were graduated together, but more was not deployed because of the lack of logistics. Okay? Was targeted for Eastern Equatoria, the Nuba Mountains, and other areas of Bahr al-Ghazal and Upper Nile, because it was the largest. As expected, taking the war effectively to cover Eastern Equatoria amidst the regime anti-SPLA and anti-Denka hate campaign. Underline that word. As expected, taking the war effectively to cover Eastern Equatoria amidst the regime anti-SPLA and anti-Denka hate campaign was not going to be a smooth running drive for the following reasons. Ya Jama, Hajal Bugulu, SPLM, Udenka are the same thing. The people that you hear them singing it here, it was taught to them Haja do Khutuf Rusum by the government in Khartoum. Wala kaya Jama, Mayada Muftufin. Let me repeat that again. As expected, taking the war effectively to cover Eastern Equatoria amidst the regime, which is government, anti-SPLA and anti-Denka hate campaign was not going to be an easy, smooth running drive for the following reason. Number one, the hate campaign has turned the majority of the citizens of that area, which is Eastern Equatoria, or Equatoria Zatu, against the movement and against the Denka, for that matter. Do you hear that? The hate campaign. For some of us who have gone through all these materials, jana kokora jamu lizati ne dama haja jadid ana bata zana bugul yani he's still lisa عنده hangover wala shunu hangover bita mundukura daw yeshuru information da lisa guide the system wala shunu. The hate campaign had turned the majority of the citizens of the area against the movement and against the Denka, for that matter. Number two, the division lobbyists in Juba were still at work. Remember the Kokora? Whenever you hear the division lobbyists in Juba, you're talking about Kokora. So the division lobbyists in Juba were still at work, trying to move heaven and earth to frustrate the SPLA efforts to bring Eastern Equatoria under its control. While people were fighting in the SPLA, Finas Juba Hina, government control areas, advocating for Kokora, Umadarin Denka, Umadarin, yani Musakafin Bitomda, who were working in the army and in the in the political areas. They were telling their people, these people, SPLA, the Denka movement, they are only frustrated because of the Kokora, because of the division of the South. Do you understand what we are saying?
Zola Al-Maderet cannot join you in a frontline war to fight the enemy together because he's against you. Why should he join you in war? And that is
Exactly
where when
what
you count the commanderat, you find people from them are Talatarba, 2, 3.
Exactly. Well, I wish y'all be here to listen. Huh?
What Kokora do Mujam and what Bafra wala shinu?
No. Kokora, there are two versions. Number one, some people they say Kokora mean divide equally. Divide equally. Lekin it is something laced with.
How about if we divide Bafra Muji equally too? Lord, if you split it into two, you can divide it equally too. I'm joking.
Exactly. Let's go ahead. God, these two issues had been addressed first before a military campaign could start in Equatoria. Aparak were making their job very, they were lobbying, talking to people like Jama, SPLA had nothing to do with Kokora. In fact, Kokora was announced after SPLA was already established. May 16, 1983, can't fi Kokora Amalu? Mafi, Nimeri did not decree Kokora. Go ahead, yeah, somebody's blinking.
No, go ahead. I'm agreeing with you. That is true.
So, Kalamda Junubin Asma Ukwes, Kokora and Islamic September laws were decreed by Nimeri after 16 May. Nas can't be Ethiopia now already. Go and do your research. So these two issues had to be addressed first before a military campaign could start in Equatoria. Imagine, SPLA were having difficulty. Just want to convince people, no, Jama, what we are fighting for is this. Girl, on that credit side, the movement was encouraged by the report that there were a large number of enthusiasts, especially among the students ready to embrace the movement in Eastern Equatoria. There were favorable reasons for the success of a military campaign in the area. These were, first, Siasa na Juriang yani. Batianganur and the rest of the field marshal. Siasa na Juriang yani. You are like a person talking to attractive young lady to win her over. Now listen to what the SPLM were doing. Dr. Garang and the SPLM were very smart. Aparak were not playing. Do you know what they did? First, the SPLA attempt in 1984 to establish a command post at Owinkibul, the former Anyanya 1 headquarters near Numili, had provided easy routes by which the natives of Equatoria could connect easily with the movement in Ethiopia. Since late 1983 and early 1984, many students, workers, and former Anyanya fighters in Equatoria had clandestinely marched toward Ethiopia to join the movement, including Jeremy Iga, Alfred Lado Gore, early in 1986, and American-educated Loki Lincoln. Of these officers became instrumental in planting the SPLA in Eastern and Central Equatoria. Nevertheless, these officers were not immediately deployed in the region before forces could effectively move to Equatoria. Because you send them there, they will kill them. Because the environment was very toxic. Second, the cattle-owning tribes of Eastern Equatoria, Boya, Dedenga, Taposa, Langarim, Latuka, and others, who had been told that the Denga were coming to rob them of their cattle, had been coached through political mobilization. Ochang guide for Jebel enough. Bugululo ya Ochang Talini ya Malim. Talini. These people, what you have been told in Juba there is not true. To fight for your right. Do this. And then as young as let's continue. Equally, the movement was convinced that the military campaign would be welcome because it was in Eastern Equatoria. You understand that language? Equally, the movement was convinced that military campaign would be welcome because it was in Equatoria that Southern nationalism had been strongest and well pronounced since the Reed Mutiny of 1955. Leaders like Paul Logali, Abdurrahman Sule, Agri Jaden, Ferdinand Adnyang, Marco Rume, Pancresio Ochieng, Natale Oyet, Father Sotanino Lohure, Joseph Oduho, Hilary Paul Logali, Hezboni Mundiri, and many more have stood against the Arab domination throughout their lives. Father Oduho, or Joseph Oduho, one of the most respected seasoned veteran Southern leaders, became one of the founding fathers in the SPLA and head of foreign affairs strategy. The SPLA officials did not have to read a lot of history to undertake the Equatoria campaign seriously. It was also recognized that the pastoralist tribes in Eastern Equatoria were the best warriors that the movement must impress upon in order to win a good deal of its recruits. The Equatorian herdsmen are well known for self-esteem and pride. Esteem and pride. They could be relied upon and would fight effectively only if nothing affecting their beloved cattle was brought to the doorsteps of their homes. Consequently, after weighing all this carefully, the Eastern Equatoria military campaign was launched immediately. The first battalions of More. Remember, Jama, before over there, it was Koryom, okay? Now the More. The first battalions of More, destined for Eastern Equatoria, were therefore called into action. And remember, Jama, More Koryom da? They la Aparak. First batch, Koryom were Aparak. More were Aparak. Nobody went to their areas for them because along in, well, I do this. Good boy, come here, please, let's do this. No, they walk all the way. Some perish on the road. So let's see. The first battalions of More destined for Eastern Equatoria were therefore called into action. An Agri battalion, one of Koryom battalion, under the command of Major Nyachugag Nyachuluk, and additional forces was hurriedly put together as Eastern Equatoria Access. Nyachugag was jeopardized by Joseph Kuala Mom, an experienced officer who had just defected to the SPLA. Commander Kuala Mom was indeed helpful in the operations. The Eastern Equatoria Access and the B Battalion went into action and encamped at Rueto, 9 miles northwest of Kafoita town, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Martin Manyela Yuel, also went into action. The Neran Battalion, commanded by Major Tahir Bior Abdallah Ajak, attacked and occupied Buma, Plateau, and established the Access Command headquarters there. With 3 battalions well coordinated, the war was finally taken to Eastern Equatoria. Political kumsars were dispatched with military campaign. You underline that. For domination of the mafia, Jama. Kuala Mom, Manyela Yuel, Tahir Biur, Ufizol Wa Nyachagak, they are can non-jeng, but Udel Kulu Jeng. Itu kan tala boshono. Kan Fizol Biamal is because our militia del, our Kokoro del, they need to be told, what you are doing here. You don't know. Go back to history and read. Now let's continue. Within a matter of weeks, as predicted, over 10,000 Taposa tribesmen were recruited into the SPLA. Because of political kumsar, mush. Do this and do this. The SPLA political orientation unit that proceeded to campaign managed to establish a base in Didinga, Acholi, and Latuka areas. Well, it was a daunting task. There were people who were being begged to go and fight for their freedom. So, finance, there were people who sacrificed themselves, who go all the way to these risky areas. Fi Jubal, fi desert Bitom there to talk to them. Do this. We are fighting because of these political kumsas. This is credit. Instead of bullying people every day, you should give credit to people. Mata mulana Izaj, Nas Ochangde should come to this room to listen. Izaj al Jamul Kul Yom de, wow, we have done this. Hutu Zatu Jangamahat. Kalam de must stop. So let's continue. The towns of Kafoita and Torit were soon isolated and besieged. Juba was also threatened. Did you hear that? Therefore, the whole of Eastern Equatoria was occupied. Despite the SPLA triumph entry into Eastern Equatoria, the SPLA campaign met a lot of predictable, disappointing encounters and reverses, both militarily and politically. The Sudanese government forces in the area, under the overall command of military governor of Equatoria, Major General Peter Shirilo. Asma kalam de kwais. Mata mulena izai. Demunu alkan gari amul izaida. The Sudanese government forces in the area, the Sudanese, Asma, you underline that word. The Sudanese government forces in the area, under the overall command of a military governor of Equatoria, Major General, Zol Major General. Mundukuru ma bakhali tokun Major General ma malta if you did not kill thousands and thousands of South Sudanese. Major General Peter Shirilo was actively engaged in assaulting the SPLA position in attempts to halt, if possible, its encroachment into Equatoria. Did you hear that, Junubi? Aulad bita Shirilo. That is all why Thomas. Thomas Shirilo, Peter Shirilo. They were highly decorated. Terrorizing people until Thomas Shirilo Talaf in 1990, 91 or 92. The question is, who can get you do the calculation from 1983 to 1992. Do you know Zol Amal Shunu, Jaram, the crime that he committed? Zol Al Gadamul is just of social media in the West, fi hotelet bita Khawaja del. Asuma kalam de kweza Junubin. Aulad bita Rajil Wahid. Peter Shirilo, Thomas Shirilo, Kulu major generals fighting the SPLA is spreading this idea of kokora. So let's continue. Fizol Wahid tani kaman, Fizol Wahid tani isimu Colonel John Maluk. John Maluk the taban, he's a monja. But the beautiful thing is, Eranchi Kon, taban monjang, they don't do harakat there. Into tamul harakat, you go by yourself. Well, if you militia, well, if you into mamara bitagu yal bitagos, do whatever you do. Unlike Nas Danila Jamal is galvanize the tribe or region, okay. No. Let's see, Kerezolis in Malukda, Colonel John Maluk, the regime operational commander, met the SPLA forces at Magoth, some 40 kilometers outside Kafoita town, but failed to keep off the SPLA incursion until they encamped at Rueto, 9 miles northwest of Kafoita town. It was from Rueto that the government forces, with the help of the native Taposa, managed to storm the SPLA forces, killing Commander Nyachigag Nyachuluk. So ya Junubin, Zolisim Nyachigag Nyachuluk da, Katalufi Equatoria, Unas al Katalu, the sons of Equatoria Zato, especially Taposa. Well, it was from Rueto that the government forces, with the help of the native of Taposa, managed to storm the SPLA forces, killing Commander Nyachigag Nyachuluk. Commander Nyachigag Nyachuluk was one of the early students of university, was one of the early groups of university students who joined the SPLA and had established a base in Buma. Although sweeping SPLA advances were somehow halted for the time being, the reverses in Kafoita were not permanent. Major Galerio Modi Urnyang, an SPL and Anyanya 1 veteran, was soon appointed to lead the command of the Eastern Equatoria, replacing Martin Manyela Yuel, who had taken over command after the death of Nyachigak. Major Galerio was to keep the Torit-Kafoita road unsafe for the enemy advance, thereby limiting transport to large government convoys. Another SPLA battalion, GOL, Wolf Battalion, was deployed and sent
the battalion with RIEK MACHAR.
Exactly. Yes, you are right, but Yanganur. It was given goal. I look at the goal. Was deployed and sent to Western Upper Nile region. The Gol Battalion was commanded by Major Dr. RIEK MACHAR Peng Durgon, one of the first wave of student academics.
So why they use the buffalo
in
on their
December
logo now?
1983?
Why they use buffalo on their logo now? They need to use those wolves. You see how wolf move in the jungle, like the way White Army running gur here, gur there, gur here. Galo, chawer.
Charling. Okay, let's continue. Commander Machar, who had just been commissioned, took the war to Bantiu, his home district. After establishing his Gol Battalion headquarters in Lair, south of Malakal town, within a short period of time, Machar put Bantiu under the complete SPLA control, The American Chevron Oil Company, the main oil prospecting company in Bantu area, found its operational at stake. The enemy forces confronting Machar force was commanded by Colonel Umar Hassan al-Bashir, who later became president and the NIF regime in Khartoum. The Mosquito Battalion, commanded by Yusuf Kwomeki, were sent to Western Upper Nile en route to Nuba Mountains. After some encounter mission in the area, the Mosquito Battalion finally entered Nuba Mountains. Mosquito went into action and had its first encounter with the Sudanese army at Gardout in the southern foothills of the Nuba Mountains, where it established a command post. The establishment of the SPLA command post in Nuba Mountains, southern Blue Nile region, meant that SPLA had effectively exported the war to War Zone 2, Northern Sudan, a thing which appeared like a dream when it appeared in the SPLA manifesto in 1983. The presence of SPLA in southern Kordofan sent the electric shock to Khartoum's authorities. Katamat, electric shock. I didn't tell you know. Twek Battalion, under the command of Daniel Awenakot, stormed western Bahr al-Ghazal and soon established its base east of Gogrial. The government forces in the area were effectively confined to Gogrial town. Twek successfully connected with Abu Shok. Nur mark that word, Abu Shok.
Abu Shok the Malaysia, Abu Shok the Malaysia. Into Tasma was Abu Shok the guy there, Min Badri. Nama the Modu Yaki.
Twek successfully connected with Abu Shok Battalion around Malakal area under the command of Major Denga Lon. Also under Bonabang, Zalan Battalion joined operation with Rhino Battalion, commanded by Martin Makura Layo, attack and occupy Lakes district countryside, thereby isolating young nations home area of Rumbek from the rest of the district. Wenu yal Malaysia Twek, Rhino, they were sent to Bargazal, they were not in Torid area, but our channel Jamli Zaida. What were they doing there? Were they playing football? Background. Militia who were just sitting there as spies. That's the reason why they did not know how the SPLA was operating. That Nas Kurtas da Albiamil Zaj Kulium.
Uman ma barab Twek manada shunu. Yal Malaysia ya manyomo yu kokora there yal kokora. Twek there is called woodpecker. Woodpecker.
Yes.
Ter sayer raso amar da beduk shajara kida bakashum to alama negata hotel. They are the mana beto.
Yes. Yes, my quiz. Wabu Shok that another copy. Porcupine. Yes. Listen, my quiz. Yamatanganu, like I said before, SPLA da battalions or division or some of the song. They were either in English, Arabic, or Dinka. Amuyok and again. So let's continue. So, what do you see here, Jama? Awenakot, Daniel Denga Alone, Bonabang, Martin Makura Layo. Del Nazmunu, domination. The Denka were there. Mulana is Kulium. You open your mouth again, we will embarrass you. Kalambita Denka de Loma, Secretary of Sudan, and deal with the government. Voila, you will be embarrassed. Aye. Let me repeat that again. Twek connected with Abu Shok. Aye. Yes.
Yeah, in 1987 we moved from Barkazal when I could can man fi tuj zatu fi uraga diang. Wana jit ligina in December. Yeah, I think December 22nd. We got Bonabang del zatu fi mal bugulu matiangit. Yeah, but we left Pakam. Balet kumda. And then we came to Matiangit. Warumbek Tawali before Barnam. That's where we got Bonabang del. In 1987, around December. Shukta? So that's true. Thank you.
Shukran. Thank you very much. Yauda, as veterans, there are veterans here. The people that you hear here as wet, unas big mountains, unas wall, unas Senaida, unas William, all of them, plus many more that we did not. Taban, at this time we were still, we did not even understand what was happening. So let me repeat that again, because this issue with domination must stop. Izajal biamulu kul yom da. Sulta bita Junub Sudan, dema tayin bita UN, al biamulu equally. No. To successfully connected with Abu Shok battalion around Malakal area under the command of Major Daniel Deng Alone, underline that. Abu Shok, Daniel Deng Alone, also under Bonabang, Zalan battalion, underline that word, Zalan, Bonabang was the head. Joint operation with Rhino battalion, commanded by Martin Makura Layo. Attacked and occupied the Lakes district countryside. Lake State yani. Awlad Malaysia do kakora desma kwa Lake State. Defi Bargazal. Lake State is not in India. Finas bugulu kul yom inu war ba malufa Bargazal. Thereby isolating Rumbek from the rest of the district. The Eagle Battalion, that is our favorite, Eagle. The Eagle Battalion under the command of Major Carbino Kwanyin Bol, went and established bases in southern Blue Nile and besieged Kurmuk town. Before the elections of 1986, Eagle Battalion attacked and captured Kurmuk and Gaysan. Thus, by 1987, the whole of southern Sudan and southern Blue Nile were technically speaking under the effective control with the SPLA. How about that? Okay, let's proceed shortly, because further must stop. Now the next move here, the حاجة بيقولوا Bright Star campaign. Let's see كده Bright Star ده عمل شنو؟ The Bright Star campaign sends shock waves to Khartoum. Even though the SPLA was embroiled in its internal power struggles and subterfuges, its impact on the regimes in Khartoum was profound. The victories SPLA inflicted on the NIF were to be responsible for two fundamental changes in the Sudanese politics. First, it ended the third liberal democratic government of Sadiq al-Mahdi. The military ultimatum of February 1989 and the mobilization of the NIF to seize power were concomitant effects of the campaign. Second, it provoked a more radical militarism under the NIF, whose aim is yet to be determined. After taking stock of its early campaign, the SPLA political military high command drew up new strategies and tactics ostensibly aimed at efforts to rectify the shortcomings that may have been experienced in the battlefields. A number of resolutions were drawn up, including the retention or retaining of its troops, as well as new recruits that were flogging in from all directions. In this regard, 3 divisions, Koryom, Mormor, and Zalzal, were recalled and put back into 3 main training camps in Bilfam, Itang, and Dima. The retraining, 3 battalions, Koryom Battalion, Mormor Battalion, and Zalzal Battalion, were recalled and put back into 3 main training camps in Bilfam, Itang, and Dima. Also, thousands of recruits from Nuba Mountains, Eastern Equatoria, and Bahar Ghazal were distributed to the main camps according to their groupings. 2 professional officers, Colonel Dominic Dimdeng and Colonel Salfa Matok, who had defected from the Sudanese army and had just joined the movement, were appointed to help train the recruits. The 2 officers were trained at the Sudanese Military Academy and had distinguished themselves before defecting to join the SPLA. More importantly, these officers had been in Anyanya 1. They were therefore bringing valuable experience into the movement. They came at a time when Carbino Kwanyin Bol and Arok Tonarok were already thrown in jail at Buma, Plateau. The arrival of two experienced officers boosted the morale of the movement significantly. The first resolution of the High Command stressed that besides training, recruits in military skills and tactics and movement should start to give them political training. They had realized that politicization of the Southern Sudanese polity was an important and necessary component of the liberation struggle. The second resolution passed by the High Command was that these areas that have demonstrated a great deal of hostility against the SPLA during the first half of the campaign must be brought under its administration. Getting more brave native warriors into the ranks of the SPLA Eastern Equatoria was the chief target. The leadership of the movement was too aware that seeds of South Sudan liberation struggle were first sown in Eastern Equatoria, whom the Equatorial Corps mutined in Torit, August 1955. Hathito, the feeling that the liberation and the attainment of an independent southern state had seasoned them to the extent that little efforts were needed to let them join the SPLA. The third resolution concerned the deployment of the Anyanya II, which had just become part of the SPLA. Conventional war strategy was also recommended to deploy these forces in the field. Thus, in July 1988, the rejuvenated SPLA assembled a huge force, codenamed Bright Star Campaign, and launched it against the Sudan government army. The Bright Star Campaign was to take the war to Equatoria, an area which had not seriously felt the SPLA presence, except for guerrilla groups sent there earlier. The aim this time was to take Kafoita and Torit and the countryside. If these towns were successfully overrun, the war would then proceed to lie siege around Juba City. The SPLA was also aware that the war in Equatoria must be backed by its control of both banks and the River Nile between Juba and Malakal, so that the steamers from Khartoum could not easily bring in supplies and reinforcement. William Nguyen was entrusted with the task. For this purpose, Access 2, formerly commanded by Carbino in southern Blue Nile, and Access 3 were combined under William Nguyen. Access 4 and 5 were merged together under Salva Kiir. Colonel John Garang maintained Access 1. Having assembled all the battalions, the Bright Star Campaign was divided into two phases. Each phase assigned specific objectives, targets to achieve. It would at the same time be able to link up and coordinate its activities with adjacent independent commands. In order to confuse the enemy, all the commands were ordered to be on the move. Katamet, the main thrust to Eastern Equatoria, went into action. Kwalmanyang Juk was ordered to divert the attention of the enemy away from the action in the main military thrust in the east bank of the Nile. Infijar forces, commanded by Commander Akenya Chek and Commander Dominic Dim, occupied Jebel Lado, just 15 miles north of city. Yajama, as we read this, you underline the
Dominic Dim there is from a BA too.
Unas Salva Kiir, unas Dictor Garang, del kulo denga.
Dominic Dim from a BA.
Huh? Yes.
Gul Taragog is my quiz. Dominic Dim is from a BA. This will capture Jebel
No, Dominic Dim. Aswa, Dominic Dim, them in Twitch. With Twitch, Mayadi.
Oh, yeah.
Dominic Dim Deng, yeah. Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
you are trying to confuse it with them.
Yeah. You're right.
Well,
You're right,
call
young nation.
call them, yeah.
Yeah.
Call them.
Bring me the tweet, my yardie. Yes, you're right.
Yes. Call them is from Abia, but Dominic Dim is from Twitch. So, yeah, Jama, You underline this word because we want to dispel this idea about domination, Denka domination. They were dominant. They were fighting against the Buffalo Bugulu Sudan government. Carbino, Arok, Dictor Garang, Salva Kiir, Commander Chiek, Paul Manyang, Dominic Dim, you name them. It is very rare to hear here Tut wala Lado wala. Matamulana is that. Yajama, we are fighting a social media war. There are people who are ignorant here. Tribalists. They must be taught Adib. That's why we are quoting all these important sources. Now let's continue. Infijar forces commanded by Commander Akenya Chiek and Commander Dominic Dim occupied Jebel Lado, just 15 miles north of Juba City. Juba Airport and other installations in the city were continuously shelled. The enemy, expecting more attacks upon the city, naturally, it started to dig in. Katamat, dig in. The SPLA objective was to tie down the troops inside Juba City and accomplish what the government ordered, one brigade troops that was supposed to relieve Torit back to defend Juba. The psychological warrior. The SPLA's objective to tie down the troops inside Juba was accomplished when the government ordered one brigade of troops that was supposed to relieve Torit back to defend Juba. The psychology. Continuous shelling of Juba city was maintained for 3 months. 3 months. Work on Kafoita and Torit were vividly maintained. When these towns were captured, the Infijar forces were divided up into Malek, Konanok, Shambe, Barnam, and Deng Nial. Ajama can't finance Bugul why these were named in Denka? Because we is propaganda gadi hassle. Malek they sim Denka, they English. Konanok they sim Denka. Shambe they is clear yani. Barnam unas Deng Nial task force. When yal bita militia da yal bita kokora biyamul izaj kul yom. Anything they hear kide kalam de kan guide mean zaman. I hope they are listening. Let's continue. Deng Nial task force was ordered to bypass Rumbek and headed for Tony, putting the enemy into panic. Panic, you underline that word. As it thought this was an attempt to link up Tony with Northern Bahar Ghazal. Deng Nial task force was particularly for politicization and recruitment mission in Tony, the hometown of one of the early leaders of the liberation struggle, William Deng Nial. Meanwhile, Kona Nok task force under Chief Kona Nok's great-grandson, Isaiah Kona Nok, moved into Yerul area for skirmishes and recruitment. Baral Nam forces were commanded by Dut Damkoch, went to Rumbek area to wait for the main forces that would eventually attack Rumbek. Also, Shambe task force under the command of Deng Moindit. They are member of parliament with a young nation. That's that. Shambe task force under the command of Deng Moindit went to Shambe to cut off.
Young nation, the Deng Moindit da kwa gog algad mana pikelo siri do.
It looks like yeah.
I believe that cool. I know Smith Kalando Dano Jim is a gong Moindit gun mana in the Kansas City. Galana Smith in a pure cool. Yeah.
You are right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. So what is it? Also, Deng Nial task force under the command of Deng Moindit went to Shambe to cut off the Shambe River port from any possible of government's schemers that might appear from Malakal. Malek task force commanded by Akech, Akenya Chiek, overran Ngalngala, Mongala, Jameza, and linked up with Infijar Brigade, base command under Kwal Manyang Juk, waiting for orders to move to Bor. It is Mitu Kalamda. Nasal Biamal is Zahkul Yom. Now let's continue.
Man, that's a
The
handful of a
impact
job,
of the
yeah.
fall of Kafoita and Torit.
That's a handful of a job. I don't see any democracy that is needed here. Where is democracy that is needed, Jama? Democracy, Tariq Machar, where is it here? People are busy fighting, planning, making the enemy panic, and capturing. Hey, Jama, where is democracy to Nasser? Where is the democracy here that is needed?
Azwa Matianganur, people were jealous, man. Did you see how Aparak were behaving? They were demoralizing the government troops.
And you know what, Yamatianganur, with that delay of Radiak Machar, that war should be in long time ago, before 2000. I'm telling you. But because of those people, all militia, that's why the delay is still 2011 to get independent. South Sudan should be independent some ago, early 90s. We should not be talking about 2011 because of those our league call always disturbing people back, and that's why we still have a problem right now. Anyway, thank you. Continue, young nation.
Shukran, and that's why we are mad. Now let's continue the impact of the fall of Kafoita and Torit. With all the arrangement in place, the Bright Star campaign main thrust under the direct command of Colonel John Garang, assisted by poignant commanders Wiyai Denga Jack, Biora Jang, or Biora Sword, James Oath, Gary Chuang Aluo, and Obotema Mur Mete was advancing successfully. And by the way, did you see command in this arrangement? Dr. Garang, Biora Sword, Gary Chuang. How many? Out of 6, half are Denka, 3. That's another domination command in the war. Let's continue because it's very important to stress this. Kalambita, Denka, Jenga, every day. We are sick and tired of it. On February 26, 1989, Kafoita town fell. 89. Young nation was in Torit. Yeah, and we were in the middle of this boiling problem. We didn't even know what was happening. Okay. On February 26, 1989, Kafoita town fell. Infijar moved swiftly and overran a number of posts, including Kiala, Ikotos, Ketire, Parajuak, and Magui. Wenu Janu Chang? You have the village, but you have the Ikotos there. Who overran it?
And guess what? Guess what?
What, but tell us.
Our backstabber by this time, 1989, is in the contact with Jalaba. The knife is in his hand being sharpened.
Exactly. They were planning. They were planning just to take leadership from Dr. Garang. Leadership, they would have destroyed this movement. Like with the able leadership with Dr. Garang, planning with strategies, with tactics. They were jealous. Look at these victories, Kada.
When we say this is a Holocaust, Jama, imagine what is right here. It's an intense war in Equatoria, in the Blue Nile, in Barghazal, Umashile, Western Equatoria. Okay? Wait until the knife go in the back of the SPLM now. With the force of Jalaba, with everything, now you're going to lose all these forces. They are going to all to be lost, all these places, and they are going all to be killed. A lot of them. And then another war will be launched. From the audio played by Wilson Tanakur. Remember earlier?
Yes, I remember. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, continue reading. Junubin. Where Monjak? Holocaust. Can you hear about Tower Nimpa? Huh. Okay.
Tell them. So let's continue. On February 26, 1989, Kafoita fell. Infijar moved swiftly and overran a number of posts, including Kiala, Ikotos, Ketire, Parajok, and Magui. Now Torit was exposed and isolated. The government forces dug in to defend the town. Dug in. You dig yourself in like a pig. Well, a warthog. Aye. But in March 1989, the government troops were uprooted from their trenches and Torit was made the SPLA headquarters. Matianganur, when this happened, I was in Torit. Torit was captured while we were under the bed. We were there, 1989. We were in Torit.
It was an amazing feeling, man. We just listened to radio. The music got baduk. Huh? Jalaba is in big panic.
Let's continue. Huh? In March 1989, the government troops were uprooted, meaning chased away and defeated from their trenches, and Torit was made the SPLA headquarters. The SPLA captured a great deal of munitions, big guns, tanks, and many prisoners of war, including the commander of Torit garrison. Numele was also captured the following day by SPLA forces who were camouflaged in Sudan army uniforms as the government convoy that was expected to deliver supplies and reinforcement from Juba. You see that, Amatanganu? Look at how smart they were. They captured Torit, then they captured a lot of trucks and military vehicles, and then they put on the Sudan government uniform, and they went into Numili Adil. And those who were guiding Numili, they thought it was their troops. They allowed them in, and then Shalu Numili. Very smart, isn't it? This is exactly what it means. Numili was also captured the following day, after Torit was captured, by SPLA forces who camouflage. They pretended. Camouflage in Sudan army uniform as government convoy that was expected to deliver supplies and reinforcement from Juba. The Numili garrison was disarmed without fighting. Katamet. Within a matter of 3 months, the whole of Eastern Equatoria was seized. The humiliation of being easily beaten, the loss of equipment, and thousands of captives sent a chilling puzzle to Khartoum. Underline that word. The loss of equipment, the humiliation of being beaten easily, the loss of equipment, thousands of captives sent a chilling puzzle to Khartoum. The National Army was naturally demoralized, and General Abdul Majid Ahmed Khalil, the Minister of Defense, was psychologically disturbed that he tendered in his resignation to Sadiq al-Mahdi. Katamat.
That's the guy who shot the Manyomaji in the leg in 1955. Abdul Majid.
Exactly, Aswa. There are people who are joking here, Galindum rebellion, rebel movement. Rebel movement, rebel movement, how does that?
In 1989, he's coming up to power.
This is what is, yes, this is
radical Arab.
Yes, let's go ahead. This humiliation was also responsible for the military ultimatum signed by 300 senior military officers addressed to Sadiq al-Mahdi government to either equip the army to enable it to face the rebel offensive or accept the peace overshares under the Kokadam Declaration and DUP SPLA peace accord. You see, Matanganur, Minister of Defense resigned, 300 senior government official troops, they wrote an ultimatum to Sadiq. Equip us to fight this SPLA or accept peace. Accept peace with them. Because we cannot take this humiliation. Katamat. Now let's continue. The capture of Bor, a missed opportunity. Upon disengaging from Juba, the Bright Star campaign forces under the command of Kwal Manyang Juk and Malek Task Force, commanded by Akenya Chek, converged and light a 2-month siege around Bor town. Okay? The government forces were subjected to starvation to the extent that soldiers had to survive by shooting vultures that landed on the bodies of their dead comrades. Katamat.
Katamat. Katamat. Katamat.
Munu galo meji. Meji awul harakat.
Then Nasal Bugulgal, we vote for Junub Sudan, we vote. Janaba just call you, say, come vote and take your country, yeah? Without a sweat, without a blood. And they are easy to say here, we divide into 3-state solution. We divide into 3-state solution. Yeah, it's easy to divide a country. It's easy. You should get yours easily.
Exactly, they should be told. These are the circumstances that forced Bashir to sign agreement. Not because his old Wahamism Riek Machar ran to Khartoum, surrendered, sat there for 10 or 11 years, and then he called for the right of self-determination. You call for something, and then you join the enemy, and then you fight your people. Into sometimes you feel ashamed of yourself. This is the reason why government bita Sudan respected SPLA, musharakat bitakum da. So let's continue. It says here, Bor was finally attacked, and the entire brigade that had been defending it wiped out. They were not chased, but they were wiped out. Those who attempted to escape.
That's the real wipe out, but I mean, wipe out
Exactly.
I'm will wipe out the yes. We will fight you, defeat you, wipe you out. Yes,
those who attempted to escape were hunted down and killed by SPLA forces, marauding everywhere in the countryside. According to reports, only 13 soldiers managed to cross over the Nile and reach Terekeka, which was still under the government forces. Thus, after 6 years since soldiers of Battalion 105 were dislodged in 1983 by government forces, marking the beginning of the second armed struggle in southern Sudan, Bor town was captured again in May 1989. It was expected that the SPLA, having taken Bor, should have continued keeping the same momentum it had gained since the beginning of the war. This move, many believe, would have at best enabled the SPLA to take over the entire War Zone 1, South Sudan. SPLA would have then turned around to face War Zone 2, Northern Sudan. But the SPLA decided to declare a unilateral ceasefire, thereby losing the momentum. And in fact, that was a mistake. Big mistake, strategic mistake. Essentially, many people has expected that keeping the momentum, the SPLA Bright Star would have moved swiftly to liberate Western Equatoria. That was a possible easy target. Since the launch of the military campaign in 1983, SPLA had never attempted to have presence in that region. It did not even try to win recruits from there until SPLA had trained nationalists and political officers from the region and deployed them among the populace for politicization, especially in the rural areas of the region. It appeared that the SPLA decision had baffled the authorities to the extent that they began a near hysteria, anti-SPLA, anti-nilotics propaganda. Precisely, the government authorities were apparently made to believe, rightly or wrongly, that the populace in Western Equatoria, composed mainly of non-nilotics on the top two nationalities, the Zande and Moro, were law-abiding in contrast to the warlike nilotics and Nilo Hamites. Yazot. In perspective, they would exert maximum efforts to keep the Denka and their cousins out of their territories only if they were properly coached. Yazol. In the way both the Equatoria, regional authorities, and the central government were not worried very much about the security situation in Western Equatoria. The army in that region was ordered to keep low profile in order not to provoke the people's sympathy for the rebels. The liberation of Western Equatoria would have enabled the SPLA to link up with Bahar Ghazal and reinforce the siege of Wawan and the capital. The third move would have involved Western Upper Nile under the command of RIEK MACHAR for his forces to move north and capture Kodok, Malut, Maban, and Rang. Thereafter, Machar's forces would move south to reinforce the siege of Malakal. Accordingly, the Bright Star campaign's main thrust from its base at Numili would have moved and captured the whole Western Equatoria. The Bright Star would then move swiftly to the east and reinforce the siege of Juba. The Bright Star campaign final assault would involve the capture of Juba, Wau, and Malakal.
Hey, that's the star on your flag right there. Hmm?
Huh?
Amazing, amazing. ما بشكل ساق بأهداف يعني.
Yeah, absolutely. While sending task forces to clear pockets of government forces still resisting. In order to complete the plan, task forces would reassert hold on northern Bahr al-Ghazal, Abyei, the Nuba Mountains, and Angasna Hills. SPLA would have brought the whole of southern Sudan under its control and would then move to face the war zone 2, northern Sudan. But unfortunately, and in a move that was reminiscent of the arrival of the Christian crusaders on the tomb of Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, the SPLA leadership issued a statement on May 9th, 1989, declaring a unilateral ceasefire, thereby putting its elaborate war plan on a hold, albeit temporarily. SPLA also promised to renew the ceasefire in June if all went well with the peace process. This was unfortunate and a non-strategic, said some military experts, for the SPLA to have declared a ceasefire at a point of imminent military victory over a superior force is the biggest blunder ever committed by a guerrilla army. If the SPLA continued with its operations, no doubt Juba City would have or could have been overrun when the iron was still red hot. With Juba in SPLA hands, the government in Khartoum would have been brought to its knees, and concessions in sharing the national power would have been extracted easily. In a nutshell, the capture of Juba would have brought a de facto independent South Sudan. Politically, this would have forced the Sudanese government to speed up preparation and the convening of the long-spoken National Constitutional Conference is scheduled for September 1989. More importantly, perhaps the fall of Juba would have prevented the NIF from seizing power, as it came to power equally weak militarily. Even if the NIF had succeeded to take over power as it did in June, General al-Bashir would, as reported, have been in favor of letting the South succeed if that would have ended the war. Had the SPLA continued with a military operation in all fronts and military fronts as it did between January and May 1989 and continued throughout the rainy season, a total conquest would have been realized in War Zone 1. This would have released the forces for War Zone 2 operations. The ceasefire, according to some observers, permitted the Sudanese army with a breathing space and planning new strategies. In consequence, it was able to take courage to regroup and reorganize. A determined dry season offensive by the Sudanese army in